Thank you, Mike, and welcome everyone. We have quite a few people on board this time, so this is great. I know there's a lot of interest in this topic, and today's topic is based off of the CAE, Cybersecurity Center of Excellence requirements, and so NCyTE is also responsible for CAE Candidates National Center, and they're going to lead Corinne Sandy, who's the principal investigator and director for NCyTE, and Stephen Troop, who's the CAE Candidates associate director, and Tasha Amos, she's not going to be presenting, but she's also the project management person for the CCNC for the candidates program, and they're going to cover the CAE's program evolution, the impact, the quality of standards, the types of programs, and many opportunities. It's going to be a high-level overview, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Stephen and Corinne. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Stephen and Mike. I'm going to share my screen here.
Also, we have Karen Weishner from the NSA program office, who's here in the audience.
Hi, everyone.
All right. Can everyone see my screen? To the academic excellence overview?
Yep.
Perfect. All right, great. Well, I'll get started. Like Stephen and Mike said, my name is Stephen Troop. I'm the associate director. I'm here with Corinne Sandy, who is the director. Tasha Amos is also involved. She's a project manager. She is not in attendance here. Unfortunately, I don't know what's happening in the rest of the country, but we've got a lot of sickness over here. We all have a cold, so she is out for today. But she is also involved, and I'm sure if you're a part of this in any way, you know who she is. So I'm going to kick it off here. So this is an overview of what I'm going to be covering today. It's going to be a brief overview of basically the entire process. So I'm going to be going over who we are, the application process, both the program of study and CAE, and hopefully get a tool review in there in hopefully maybe 30 minutes. So if you've been into any of our other workshops, you'll know it can be 4-hour workshops to go through all the details. So to do that in 30 minutes is going to be quite the feat. So like I said, I'm hoping to give a broad overview of what's required, hopefully direct you, if you're unfamiliar with this process, of where you can get started, what you can expect if you're getting involved in this whole process. If you're getting started, you can fill out the checklist and everything that's to get the ball rolling. So hopefully this is informative. We'll have the last part of the workshop here where we can answer questions. So if you have any questions during, feel free to put it in the chat. Otherwise, we will be reviewing the questions at the end. Okay, so just to give you an overview of who we are. So we are the CAE Candidates National Center. We're grant funded by the NSA. Our goal is to help institutions complete the program of study, validation, and CAE designation. Here are some numbers here. So since the updated CAE process has begun back in 2020, we've helped 163 institutions earn the CAE designation. This is a group effort where we've had mentors, we've had pre-submission reviewers all involved with this process, helping institutions submit a completed application that meets all the requirements. Currently, as of October 2022, we have 135 active institutions in the program. Application assistance and program development, just if you're unfamiliar, application assistance is for institutions that meet the basic requirements and are in the process of completing the application. Program development is for institutions that don't quite meet all the basic requirements, are still in the development process. So we have advisors for that section. So these are the two areas that the candidates program oversees. So right now we have 135 in application assistance who are currently working on filling out their application, and we have 53 in program development. Just for some resources here, the CAE Candidates National Center resources are located on NCyTE, on our NCyTE website. If you navigate to the institution tab on the NCyTE website, you can see that there are resources for the CAE cyber defense, cyber operation, and research. So all the resources there, we have workshops available. We have links to the requirements document. So all of that can be found on our website. I also listed our emails down below. This is a good way if you have any questions about this process, or if you completed a checklist or are unfamiliar with where something's located, you can always email us using the emails below. I highly recommend if you are going to email us, send it to either myself or Tasha, where we work on this regularly every day. Corinne wears many hats, so it's best to reach out to us. Okay. So one of the exciting changes that's happened over the past couple of years is the candidates program has expanded our reach a little bit. We are now mentoring in CO and R. R is in the beginning stages. We're actually planning the pilot right now. CO went through the pilot at the beginning of this year, and we're actually starting the cycle. And we're recruiting out of each cycle for mentors and pre-submission reviewers. And then cyber defense, this is the one we've been working on since I've started. I've been here since 2018. So we've been able to grow this and develop this with mentors and pre-submission reviewers. So these are requirements documents. So if you're interested in learning about each one of these designations, you can go to the address down below. And this is, I believe, on the NSA website. And you can download a copy, a PDF version of the latest requirements document. And this is what they look like. Today, I'll be focusing primarily on the cyber defense. Okay, so getting started. So I'm not sure where everyone is in this process. Some of you may be familiar, some of you are redesignating, maybe some of you are mentors and are already familiar with this. But if you're brand new and you don't know where to start, this is where you get started right here. So this is on the caecommunity.org website. So I have the full link down below. But you could also navigate to the website and you just go to About Us, go to the National CAE in Cybersecurity Program tab there, and then go to the checklist. From there, you'll be brought to 3 different checklists. Again, there's the CD, Cyber Defense, Cyber Operation, and R. So you just want to make sure you complete the correct checklist. And once you've completed this checklist,
just to add one thing there, community colleges are only eligible for cyber defense.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, if you're a community college, make sure you're completing the one right here, and meet all the requirements. All the requirements are listed down below as well. So make sure you meet all those requirements before completing the checklist. So what this does is when you complete this checklist, it goes for a review, and basically we determine if you meet the basic requirements. So this would be if you complete it and you, for example, your program doesn't meet like the maturity requirement, so it hasn't been in existence for 3 years, most likely you'll be placed on program development. So you'd be an assigned advisor who can help you develop your program and help you get started in that area. If you do meet the basic requirements, you'd be placed in application assistance and be assigned a mentor and a cycle. So this, what you can see here on the screen, this is also on our NCyTE resource page. So if you want to see what it looks like, this is an example of what the cycles look like. So in the updated application process, there are 2 phases. There's the program of study validation and the CAE. So for example, if you were to fill one out today, you may be assigned to cycle 14. You'll see down right here. That means that you would have access to your application in April. So you'd have access to the actual application where you can actually input your information in April. You'll notice there are 2 deadlines here. So we have an application due here, and we have a final. These are both required. So you'll have access, then you'll have your first deadline a few months after that. So
just to add to that, so those of you that are redesignating, this process is different from the last time you designated. you're actually assigned to a time frame that you have to get the application in. We also have, just for those of you that aren't aware, the process includes several checks to ensure that your application is complete and that all of the materials are in there. That's what the pre-submission review is. So once you've completed your application, there is another person that will review your app and give you a report on if there's anything missing or what their opinion is of the quality. And then you have time to fix that, and then you do the final submission.
Yeah. And so, and also just to add to that, the key here is, even though this is when you would have access to the actual application, that does not mean that's when you should start thinking about the application. So, if you, for example, were to complete the checklist today and you get assigned to the cycle, that means start today. Download the requirements document, create a file structure where you can actually start collecting information, inputting into a separate file. And then that way, by the time you get to the 15th, you can start filling it out and you have all the information collected. I was just telling Stephen Miller at the beginning of this, about 5 or so institutions per cycle have done this and basically complete the application within 2 weeks of getting access. So it is possible to complete it very quickly. Other institutions will wait till this time, and you only have a few months before your first deadline, and then the final submission deadline's after that. But that's after you received a pre-submission review. There's a gap there. Sometimes you get a lot of feedback, so you'll only have a little bit of time to make the corrections. So I highly recommend getting started as soon as possible. Okay, so this is a little complicated if you're unfamiliar, but this is basically an overview of what the entire process from start to finish looks like. So if you're unfamiliar and you're just trying to get started today and you fill out the checklist, you're starting right here at the very, very beginning. You fill out the checklist. If you get assigned to application assistance, you're assigned a mentor and a cycle, and then you're placed in application assistance for a couple months to actually work on the application. One of the things that is important to keep in mind is all applications that are being sent over to peer review need to be endorsed by the CCNC. So the director needs to approve your application, which means you need to make all the corrections that are identified in the pre-submission review. You need to follow the direction of your mentor. All of that is important for a successful application. So we have had some institutions who don't make these corrections, would submit a application that would fail. If we see that they haven't completed the application and it's not going to pass, it's not going to be endorsed by the CCNC, by the director here. So that is something to keep in mind. Another thing.
We have one question. So if they're in cycle 14 for the POS, are they also in cycle 14 for the CAE?
Yes, that is the goal. So we hope to keep everyone in the same cycle. We have had very few situations where we had to move someone to a later cycle, and that's been, we've come out of the COVID issues and all the things that have happened there. But no, the goal is to stay on track in the same cycle. Okay, so one of the things that has changed as well is, so once you've completed your first program of study, starting in 2023, you will have the opportunity to validate additional programs of study. So some institutions may validate a program, and then instead of moving over to the CAE portion of the application, they may want to validate additional program of study. You can do that once you've earned your first validation. Most institutions go over and complete the CAE. I would recommend that if you have the opportunity to do that. And then after the CAE, you can also go back and validate additional programs as well. But this is an overview. This chart is, if you go download the requirements document, this exact chart's not in there, but you'll have an overview at the very beginning of this entire process. Okay, so I'm going to go over the program of study application. It's like I've said, we've done these kind of workshops before, and we've spent probably an hour, sometimes just on step one of this application. I'm going to attempt to do this in, well, about 20 minutes, 15 minutes. So we're going to go pretty quick. But if you have any questions, let me know as we're going through. So if you're starting the application, this is what program of study validation application looks like. It has 4 parts. Don't be deceived though. It's those 4 parts break down into subcategories. So it does get fairly complicated pretty quick. So make sure you download the requirements document, look it over. Don't think that just because it's just a 4-part section, application, that it's going to be really easy and you can do it in a week.
Okay,
it actually takes a lot more time.
So just to give a little overview, so to earn the CAE, it's a 2-step process. The first thing you have to do is identify a program at your college and then get it validated. Once you have the program validated, you then can proceed to the CAE. You must have at least 1 validated program before you can apply for the CAE. And so what he's showing you now are the various requirements to validate your program of study. Each item on here, there's in the requirements document, it tells you what you need to provide. You upload everything as a PDF. Most of them are pretty straightforward. There are a few places in there where people get hung up. We do have a workshop that we do on this that's much more extensive than what we're telling you now.
Yeah. And one thing I would want to highlight, just as based on the feedback I've received from institutions in the program, is something like this may seem fairly straightforward and easy, but one of the more challenging elements of this is it requires you to interact with various parts of your institution. So you do need to interact with people outside of your department. Sometimes you may need to reach out to your accreditation officer, maybe the registrar. So it does require you getting to know your institution really well. So that can be very time consuming. So this is part of the reason why you want to get started as soon as possible. Again, be familiar with these sections. You want to be familiar with the program of study that you're looking to validate. You're going to want to be familiar with the curriculum map and plan. So if you're not familiar with these areas, you do want to do some research. Again, your institution's accreditation officer is a good resource. Sitting down with them and talking with them ahead of time, explaining what you're doing, can really, really help you out. If you're new to this, you're going to see down here KU alignment. KU stands for knowledge unit. This is a key element to the application. So you're going to want to look up the requirements document and really familiarize yourself with what knowledge units are. I'll move to the next slide. Because the knowledge units are, you're going to have to meet some requirements here. So if you're a 2-year institution, you're going to have to align your program with different knowledge units. You'll see here for like a 2-year institution, you need to meet a core knowledge unit, 3 of the core. You have to do 5 technical or non-technical and 3 optional. So there's a whole list. If you go to our website on NCyTE, a whole list of the KUs. And basically these are just, well, how would you have best described the knowledge units, Corinne?
So it's a set of outcomes and topics that are relating to like specific technologies. So there's a knowledge unit for networking, for instance, that several of the topics include like the protocols and things like that. And what you have to do, those of you that have designated before are familiar with the mapping. Okay, we're not mapping any KUs. What you're doing is showing that your program is aligned with the KU. So in other words, there's not a requirement to do a detailed thing where you show this topic's taught on this slide type of thing. Basically, you list your course outcomes, you list the outcomes for the KU, and then you write why you feel this meets the KU. So KUs, they're called knowledge units. It's topics and outcomes for a specific body of knowledge around a certain topic like networking, programming, things like that.
Yeah. So here's an example, if you can see it on my screen here, just all the different knowledge units that you can familiarize yourself with. This is located on our NCyTE website. And so if you click on each one of them, it'll actually give you a full overview of what the topics that are covered by each one of these knowledge units. Okay. So this is important. I highly recommend you look into this, download the requirements document to become more familiar with this. Okay, section 2. So again, it seems fairly simple, and it can be fairly simple, but this does require you to be familiar with your program and to reach out outside of your department possibly. So you may, for example, in 2A, need to get in contact with your registrar. So you'll need to get a notice of the enrollments and graduations from the program of study. Some people have submitted a Word document just with this information. That's not going to work. You're going to need something that's official, something that's from your institution. So again, be familiar with everyone at your institution, get to know everyone at your institution, because you're going to have to work together, and be familiar with your program. So you have to provide student work. You may need to reach out to instructors to get this information. So again, it is a fairly straightforward process, but it does take some teamwork from your institution. Section 3, this is just faculty members. This is providing information about your faculty, and you have to provide full-time, part-time. But one of the key elements here I want to point out is the point of contact. So the person here who typically completes the checklist and is getting everything started typically is the point of contact. I want to emphasize here, this isn't a status thing. So you don't, some institutions have wanted their president or their dean to be the point of contact. That doesn't always work. So you need to keep in mind that the point of contact is the person who will be reached out to if there's an issue, if they submit their application and there's questions about it, something's not quite clear. The peer reviewers will be reaching out to the point of contact for more information. So you're going to want to have the point of contact be somebody who is available and who is very familiar with their application. And the same goes for the alternate point of contact. So if they can't reach the point of contact, they will try to reach out to the alternate point of contact. And if neither of you are available, well, that could result in a failed application. So please keep that in mind when you are filling out your application. Again, most of this is pretty straightforward. I do recommend looking at the requirements document. Is there anything you want to add to this, Corinne?
There was a question about schools meeting a standard, and I think it's important to point out that the bulk of this application is supplying evidence of what your school does. In other words, there's something in here about outcomes assessment. You are not required to do that assessment the way it's spelled out in the requirements document. You supply the information about how your school does it. So this is one thing that people do get confused about, because we've seen people replicate some of the examples that are in the requirements document. Those examples are just to show you what other schools do, but it's not something you're supposed to replicate. You provide information about what your school does.
Okay.
So Jeanette Geller, maybe you could, maybe at the end of this, you could explain that, because you're saying you found that some of the required formats were different. I don't understand what that means.
Oh, just the layout for what you guys were requesting on the application. We had a hard time trying to figure out what you needed, but we got through it. We
Okay.
We worked with you guys, and like you said in the chat, we figured out, okay, this is not how necessarily the standard might be, but that's how you're doing it. So we we had to make some changes to respond to what you required. But it was tough for some of the general things, again, because we're a SUNY school, and SUNY is so we had to make some layout changes. And I went back and forth with you and Karen and everybody and Michael to, get to understand, and even Stephen Troop to understand that, we do things a little different by us.
Mhm.
So that's what I'm referring to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you
Yeah,
for
and
the
that-
platform.
Yeah, and that has come up. Every institution is going to be a little bit different, so it's going to look a little different. We have examples in the requirements document that you can use as an example. Corinne went over that. That doesn't mean it's going to look exactly like what you see in the requirements document. It's just giving you kind of an idea of what other institutions do. So that is something to keep in mind. It doesn't mean if it doesn't look the same way as the requirements document that you don't qualify necessarily. So keep that in mind.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah. All right. So section 4, this is the final part of the program of study validation. So this is the area that has been somewhat challenging for institutions. So, and mostly I think it's because they're not looking at the requirements document and looking at all the requirements for each one of these sections. Most people have looked at this and go, well, I think this is all part of one document that we have. And so what they'll do is they'll upload one document, the same document to, A, B, and C. And that's not necessarily going to work, because you have to keep in mind, this is being reviewed by reviewers who know nothing about your institution. And some of these documents can be hundreds of pages long. So what you're going to want to do is, keeping the mentor or the reviewer in mind, look exactly at what they're asking for each one of these sections. And then if it's a part of a large document, make sure you highlight, where do you find where these requirements are met? Highlight that section. Each one of these sections have a justification. So if there's anything that you feel is going to be unclear or not communicated to the reviewer clearly, put in a justification explaining exactly why you uploaded what you put in your application. So basically what you're looking for is a continuous improvement plan, improvement process for your institution, and the schedule. So this is how your institution is continually improving, and they just want the plan, process, and schedule. If you look at the requirements document, each one, they have a breakdown of what is required. Just make sure it meets those requirements.
Stephen, even that part we found a little challenging at RCC, in that based on the structure of the college, some things are done at different levels. And I remember us going through a hard time with that as well.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that was one of the other challenging parts, because we may want to do something, but if the dean or the program director, I'm no longer department chair, so I couldn't speak for that type of stuff. But the people above us may not have the same plan that we have. And that was a little challenging too, I have to admit. But again, we got through it, talking to you and Tasha and Karen, and we got through it, but it can be a little challenging.
Yeah, this section I would highly recommend, especially if you're assigned to a mentor. Make sure you discuss with your mentor. They are very experienced, and many of them have mentored multiple institutions, so are familiar with many of the different ways institutions do things. So I highly recommend reaching out to your mentor, or if you don't have a mentor, reaching out to us.
Wasn't very helpful, just to let you know.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, so we're going to move on to the second part of the application. This is the CAE. As you can see, this is 10 parts. So I'm, crunched for time. So what I'm going to do is only focus on 4 of the sections. These are the sections that have reoccurring problems, things that people are have had issues with or feedback on that they say they need to be covered. So I'm just going to be covering those. The other ones you can look up pretty quickly. Stuff like accreditation, very, very easy to look up and to complete. So let's start with the institutional commitment. So this is going to be pretty familiar. This was a requirement under the old process as well. But why I want to emphasize this is I recommend, even if you're at the very beginning, so you're just starting your program of study validation, I recommend skipping ahead, going to the CAE and looking at this requirement and getting this started as soon as possible. The reason for that is, one, if you're a part of an institution, a large institution, it can take several months for this to get completed. So just to get the signature from your provost or higher can take a long time. So I highly recommend getting this started earlier. But in addition to that, I think since you are working with other institutions and part of filling out this application is working with different departments, if you're a part of a big institution, one of the things that can really be a benefit to you is having a signed letter from your provost or higher saying, no, our institution is pursuing this designation. So please, it may be inconvenient for you to work with this person on, whatever it is that you're trying to complete. You will have a letter that's signed saying, this is what our institution is pursuing. So having that is a real benefit to you. So I highly recommend looking into this ahead of time. Also, you'll see that there's different requirements that need to be in the letter. I recommend you complete the letter for before you submit it to your provost or higher. Complete it ahead of just a draft and say, if they want to make changes to it, that's fine, but make sure that these requirements are met first. That's just going to save a lot of time. I do want to highlight, though, one thing that's come up several times is we've had people submit a letter that's been drafted. It has all the requirements met. They submit it for a signature, they get it back, and then they, realize the day before they're submitting that their provost has actually edited this letter, and some of the requirements were removed. So make sure, even when you get it back, it still meets all these requirements. Okay, moving on to the second part is the center website or the established center. This is another one that I do recommend looking ahead of time to get started, because it can take a decent amount of time, especially if you're a part of an institution, a larger institution, because they do require that the established center be on your institution's website. So it has to be able to be found there. That has been a problem for some institutions. So if you're concerned about that in any way, I do recommend right at the very beginning, get this ball rolling. The signed letter can be very helpful in this area as well. So if you have that signed letter and you're trying to get a cyber center put up on your website, it can be very helpful saying, no, see here, this is the letter. And I'll go back to the letter here. One of the requirements in the letter is provide institutional support of an official cyber center within the institution. So it's right here that you can show this to your team, whoever's in charge of your website, and they can say, look, see, this is what we need to have completed.
I do want to point out, center is in quotes.
Yeah.
Okay, so for our universities, this is not like establishing a center that requires the board of trustees to approve it and things like that. This is whatever your center is. You should have a website, though, and I can tell you, we've had schools that have run into, they haven't gotten a lot of support at the institution. We had one college that actually bought a .com, and this center must be associated with your institution, which is why it has to be searchable from the page of the college.
Yeah, so this is an example of what we have here at Whatcom. This is our center. It's on our website here. Okay. Moving forward, so academic integration. This is just another example of having to reach outside of your department and get other disciplines involved. So this can take some time because reaching out to say the nursing department or the business department, you're going to have to reach out and get 3 syllabi with course names and cyber modules clearly highlighted. I mean, that can take a decent amount of time. So you're going to want to get started on this fairly early, build relationships. I know one of the things I've been told by a lot of people who've gone through this process is, emails sometimes don't work the best. So you may want to go and try to be face-to-face, get to know the person. and reach out that way. So definitely something to start thinking about ahead of time. And finally, I wanted to emphasize the section 9 of the CAE application. This is the outreach portion. So some of you are going to be, this is going to be the first time you've completed the application. So you're going to see this and not know what you're supposed to do. So for example, it's going to say, evidence that faculty members from the applying institution have contributed to the CAE community. That can be very challenging if this is your first time filling out the application. So, you don't necessarily have the opportunity to get involved. So we do have different options available, which I'll go over in the next slide. But this, again, this has been a reoccurring issue or area of concern for some of the newer and redesignating institutions. So make sure you look ahead of time of what is required here. Because part of the requirements for earning the CAE is to be a part of the community and to reach out and to contribute to the community, the cyber community here. So you're going to want to get ahead of this. Most mentors that I've talked to say that they bring this up even right at the very beginning of the program of study validation, because we do have opportunities. For example, in this slide here, these are different opportunities that are available to you. So, to participate, we have, if you go to the caecommunity.org, there are different like tech talks and CAE forums that you can participate in and be a part of. We have different workshops that we're holding. For example, the candidates program is planning on holding a virtual CAE workshop where we can go over each one of these requirements in depth in February. So that's something, if you're new to this process, you could participate in that and give feedback and discuss those topics in more detail. And then down below, here are some contributions. So opportunities for contributing to the society. You can go to these websites here. It's just an opportunity to submit curriculum and resources down below there. Do you want to add anything to this, Corinne? I think you're muted.
There are some questions in chat. One of them, I'm not getting it. So there was a slide about IAB. So was that back on 8?
Hi, Corinne. This is Prashant. I asked that question.
Okay.
As a requirement for the established center for cybersecurity.
Okay.
Last requirement that says documentation on the industry advisory board. So
Yes.
wondering, what documentation must be submitted? Is it
Oh, okay. Yeah, it can be meeting minutes. It can be, you do not have to list your advisory board members on the center website if you don't want to, but it just has to show that they actually exist and that you're meeting to discuss the program.
Fantastic. Actually, we have sent out invitation letters, everything. We can provide that. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
Mm-hmm. And then there was another one about IT, which I didn't get either. Let's see.
That was me.
Oh, okay. What was the question?
So on point 8, academic integration, you had mentioned that other degree programs outside of cybersecurity needed to also include cybersecurity concepts.
Yeah.
Would this have to be totally outside of degree, like something like medical, or could it be something within IT in general, like not cybersecurity, but let's say databases or programming and networking?
It's outside the program that you're submitting for validation. But
Okay.
ideally, like, so for instance, you may have a cyber degree and then you've got another degree that's computer science, and you want to use that. Technically you can, but really what they're looking for are other disciplines like health, social sciences, criminal justice, and how they're teaching cyber in their classes. So like, for instance, in health, they're addressing the HIPAA rules and privacy and that kind of thing. That would be an example of something you would get out of a health program. Criminal justice, a lot of times they may be doing like digital forensics or at least having workshops on it, or at least addressing the topic in the class. And so that would be something you could supply.
Okay, so something that will be preferred to be outside of IT in general.
Well, IT is kind of like, I wasn't sure what you were talking about, because these programs are found, about 40% of the CAEs are in business programs. So it's outside of the program that you're submitting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. If there's no other questions, I'll move on. Got a little bit of time. Oh, we got coming up quick here. All right. Okay, so this is the final section here. I'm just going to do a quick tool review. So just to give you an overview of what the tool looks like, if you're interested, here's the website here. You can just navigate here. So we're at this time, we're not allowing institutions to have accounts until they are assigned to a cycle. So unless you're a redesignating institution, they do have accounts because they need to complete their annual report. But this is the website that you'll be navigating to. I have it pulled up here. Let's see if I can just show you. I have a test account going. Okay, can everyone see that? It's not, I hope so. Okay.
Yeah, we can see it.
Perfect. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like. This is our test account. So Sandy University. So once you get into your application, this is what it will look like. You'll have access to the program of study validation application here, the CAE on this tab here, and the annual report.
Just for those of you that are brand new and are going in for the first time, there's institutional information that's required prior to getting into this part, which includes the name of your president and contact information, your different numbers associated with grants, like the DUNS number and stuff. It's just small, but just so that this isn't the first thing you see.
Yeah. Yeah, this is all under all applications here. So if you navigate to the application, so the process can be fairly complicated getting it started right now, because right now everything is manually done. We are working on automating that so that you can go in there and actually just your application will be ready to go for you. But right now there is a process of starting, which we do send to you once you're assigned to your cycle. But if you enter into the application, this is what we just reviewed. So each section here, you just need to go and you can just click view, and you'll see all the requirements all in the application here. You just need to fill it out. Also, so if you are the point of contact, most likely if you are the point of contact and you started it, you initiated this whole process, you're also considered the access manager. So the access manager is going to be responsible basically for your institution's site here. So you will have to assign people to your applications, and you have to approve their access as well. So if you're the point of contact and you have an alternate point of contact that wants to help you with this process, you need to approve their access under this pending users registration. So they'll request access to your institution's application, and this is where you will approve them. If this is you're unfamiliar with any of the processes here and you're trying to figure out how to do something, we do have a help page right here. So this gives a breakdown of different, processes that may be kind of confusing to you. So how to add additional users, it gives you a whole breakdown on how to do that, assigning users to the application. I have different snips here as well. So if you have any questions, I would, refer you to the help page first. And then if this doesn't answer the question, you can reach out to us using our email. Sometimes we're still in the process of developing. We're kind of in the final phase of developing the application. So when they do push updates, sometimes it does cause some errors. So if something like assigning someone to your application isn't working, reach out to us and we'll see if there's a technical issue that's preventing that from happening. So yeah, this is, again, quick overview, just giving you an idea of what it's all going to look like. We can move on to the final one, which is questions. I know we only have about 10 minutes, so I want to make sure we have plenty of time. Is there any questions on what we've covered today? Don't hear anything yet.
Hello, I'm Alpri Ayla from University of Tampa. So my question is about the outreach. So is it okay if few faculty do the outreach, or does it have to be like a lot of faculty in the program doing it? So are you looking at the institutional level, or can we just one or two faculty doing the outreach activities?
Outreach. Let's see. Let's go back to the slide. So, so for example, it depends on which one you're responding to. So like for 9C, evidence that faculty members from the applying institution had contributed to the CAE community. So in this particular case, it'd be like faculty members from your institution. Most of the, yeah.
It says 3 for 9B.
For instance, that one.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, yeah.
Is
Yeah,
it
so
3
each-
faculty? No, it's 3 evidences. 3
Yeah.
pieces of evidence.
So this
So
would
there
be,
isn't a lower, I mean, it has to be at least 1, I believe. Can't be 0.
yeah. In this case, I believe they would be like, different different invites that they've taken like snips of invites and things that they've attended.
Yeah, but he wants to know how many faculty have to have participated. From what I can see, there isn't a number of faculty. It's just that your faculty are doing it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's more on the institutional level rather than faculty per se.
Well, it's faculty in your program.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Same question again, but it's about the 9C. I'm just wondering, how can we get the contribution evidences, because we are all new members. We never did any review or mentoring or anything. So
Yeah, so I'd want to refer you to these resources here again. So for new, these resources are available to you if you're part of the application assistance. You can sign up for any of these things. You can go to workshops. You can submit to Clark Center or the CA Resource Directory. We've also had, since we are the beginning, we've been working on the NCyTE tool, so the application tool. What we have done for the NSA has approved for new institutions that are not redesignating, but new to the whole process, sending feedback to myself or Kareem, so the NCyTE people at the CCNC, giving feedback on the application experience. So if you have any feedback, something that's not very intuitive, something that, just any recommendations, sending an email with a list of recommendations that has been recognized
Well,
as a
we've
contribution.
also surveyed people that are in the tool.
Mhm.
And that's also a contribution because you're helping us make the tool better.
fantastic. These
Yeah.
two help us. And there is one other quick question about the Clark Center. If we try to post, or if we want to prepare some material and if we want to upload, how long it's gonna take, for them to approve those materials to be published there?
Okay, so what I would do is take a screenshot that you submitted. Submitting it, really, the contribution is you submitted it. It doesn't necessarily mean they approved it and it's being used by other people. At least that's how I read it. But they are pretty quick now to turn it around. Also, some of their learning objects are like an hour. They're not like full courses or anything like that. So basically, I would submit it and then I just take a screenshot and use that as my evidence.
Fantastic. I think I just did that yesterday, so I should have taken the screenshot. Thank you.
I think you can go back in and get that. That is because I have something I submitted like 3 years ago that never got published. And I think it's still there.
Thank you, ma'am.
Mhm.
Is this considered a CAE event?
This is participation in NCyTE activities is considered something that you can submit. I read it in the requirements document. So yes, you could count this.
Thanks.
Mhm. Any other questions? Let's see if there's anything in chat. Can we have the presentation slides?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, this is about the contribution. Okay. I think they also can do the tech talk, can't they?
Yeah,
Did you have that? Okay.
I did. Yeah.
I also wanted to add, we're always looking for presenters for our member meetings, and that's something else you could do. Like an upcoming member meeting, we're going to have a guy from the satellite, the center that does satellites, geotech, and he's going to go over the satellite protocols and the security vulnerabilities. So you could also, if you're interested, if you have some specialty or something that you would like to present to our members, that's something else you can do. And Stephen Miller, I think we left Stephen completely out of this thing, but Stephen runs the review center. So what we told you today is everything that happens prior to submission of the application. After the application is submitted, Stephen Miller assigns the reviewers. So he manages the reviewers in collaboration with the NSA. He also sets up the schedule for our member meeting. So he would be the one to contact if you have something you would like to share with the members.
Right. And attending those meetings, the member meetings, you could also, there's a chance for questions and also give your input. So if you're a subject matter expert, and for example, one of our faculty members used to work at NASA in satellite security. So for this one coming up in February, Joel's going to help participate in that activity. That's something you can count toward your designation. So, and I would reiterate what Stephen said before. We're in cycle 14. We're already putting all of our stuff together to get ready to submit in April. So, and we already found several things that we have to go out and outreach to other departments within the school to make sure we have meet the criteria. So it's never too late to get started. And we've actually collected our data ever since we redesignated. It's just a discipline that we've gotten into so that we save, like you mentioned, one of you mentioned you submitted to Clark, but you didn't do the screen save. Just kind of get that into your regular activities so that you automatically save that material and save it out in some kind of document. So anyway.
So prior to Stephen taking over the peer reviewing, he was our super mentor. So he's mentored, I don't know how many colleges successfully to the CAE. And so if he's telling you he's getting ready now and he's in a cycle far down the list here, I think that's really important advice. We do have some schools that don't even give it a second thought till the day it's supposed to, they get access to the tool. Michael Burt knows all about that. And so you don't want to be that. Ideally, you would just methodically be gathering your information and be ready to go when the tool opens.
I guess I would add one last thing real quick. You know, you see these cycles and some people are tempted to believe that, you know, oh, I didn't make this cycle, I'll just go to the next one. That's not necessarily the case. We do have a cap for each one of these cycles. So 50 institutions per cycle, and it does fill up very quickly. So for example, if you were assigned to cycle 10, you're like, oh, I couldn't make it, I'm going to go to the next one. Well, that may not be available. You may not be available till cycle 15. So that can really push out the process quite a way. So make sure if you're assigned to a cycle, really focus in on that cycle to meet the requirements and submit.
Anything else? We'll go on a little bit over, but this could be a lot longer session, as Stephen had mentioned. It takes about 4 hours at least to go through you'll get a chance in the February workshop. So I would advise you, I've already ask one of our faculty member to attend. He's the alternate. He's going to attend that workshop. So everyone on board needs to understand the process, in my opinion. So,
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else, Stephen, Kareem, before we adjourn?
Don't think
Well,
so.
I just, sometimes people get a little overwhelmed. This isn't that hard. Seriously. So it's much easier than it was before. And we have people
Yeah.
here to help you and a lot of resources available. So just wanted to tell you that.